Legitimately, despite a little bit of a pacing issue, episode 3 of Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer is really what I've been waiting for. As much as I keep telling myself, just wait, this writer's going to do something really crazy, this is where I'm really starting to see that mystery pick up. I'm really starting to see the writer unfolding the mysteries behind this story. Now, granted, this is technically, I believe, according to Satoshi Mizukami, this is supposed to be the end of the first volume at this point. So it makes sense why everything's starting to pick up. We're really starting to see the hooks getting sunk in. And I think that's around several things here. We kind of had several teases throughout this episode. One being the fact that they're hinting that this is not the first time. Like, the Noi Croissant is literally saying, man, I don't want to die midway again. So wait, this has happened before. And well, granted, we had that intention there. We already established technically from Croissant that this is the weakest. So how would they know that they're the weakest? How did they know that they can't fight against the golems? Something had to have indicated that they're weak. But if this is the first time, they wouldn't know that. Additionally, with all these little dreams that Yuhi Amamiya is having, it's sort of indicating that he's talking, I'm assuming right now, that he's talking directly to the princess. He's not talking to Samidare. He's talking to the princess. And they're technically indicating a lot about the outward appearance, the inward appearance, the inner, the outer, all that kind of stuff in these discussions in the dream world. So I'm assuming that he's talking directly to the princess in these little brief dream moments. And yes, technically introducing the next warrior, the next knight in this story. So this is a pretty packed episode. And yes, technically him finally making the pact, finally breaking the chains of his life, and really getting into what drove him the direction he's going. I love that this entire episode had a lot of emphasis on essentially destruction through hatred and destruction through love, which I think I'll get into in a minute. Didn't really get too much out of Satoshi Mizukami's tweets this time, except for the fact that he's mentioning this is the end of the first the end of the first volume. And additionally, he mentioned something about Yuhi's father. He said that originally when he planned to write out his parents, yes, everything was planned for what happened to his father, but he originally intended to have his mother so devastated that she would end her own life. But he chose not to because he didn't like that idea of... It's a bad thing. They don't really like emphasizing on that kind of thing. It's obviously a touchy subject in Japan. He chose to avoid it entirely by just saying that she disappeared, which still technically could mean that she did that. It's just not outright saying it. So yeah, covering everything regarding the grandfather. Yes, he goes to see the grandfather. Croissant's mentioning, we can cure his illness. He's like, no, I'd probably rather just take him out. Like, if that's going to be my wish for my grandfather, just take him out. Hitting again on the idea that every single day, 3 times a day for 10 whole years, his grandfather kept telling him, don't trust people, basically. People are scum. If you make friends, they'll stab you in the stomach. If you make enemies, they'll stab you in the back. Everybody's scum, including you and me. And we find out when he does finally go meet his grandfather's, yes, his father was a detective. He ended up going missing. They finally found his body. He was discarded, and it was all because of his partner. His partner was the one that betrayed him, got him killed or killed him himself, and disposed of his body. So yeah, everybody at this point, mother, grandfather, everybody just lost all hope in humanity. Like, this was a terrible act, and it messed him up. Enough that his grandfather took him in after his mother ran away and instilled upon him never trust people ever again. He lost all hope for humanity. And it seems like based on his living with his aunt's family for a while, he restored his hope. So enough that he wanted to apologize to Yuhi. Despite the fact that, you made my entire life a living hell. You couldn't let me grieve and all this kind of stuff. It was a nice little build-up. Like I said, despite the fact this pacing of this episode was kind of off, this is a really powerful moment. Enough that even adding to the later parts where he finally realizes that, based on Croissant, like, I give Croissant credit here. Like, Croissant's always there saying, why would you think like that? Well, don't you think that they'd like you? Like, don't you realize that your grandfather loves you? Like, just him constantly kind of poking and prodding at Yuhi, eventually realizing, look, I don't hate my grandfather that much. Like, my assumption here is that it really feels like Yuhi almost realizes equally they were both messed up. Like, this was a very messed up situation, and he finally, it doesn't seem like he doesn't forgive him. He says he doesn't forgive him. But at least he doesn't seem like he hates him as much. Like, again, it seems like he understands, and You could probably pay a little bit of that to the idea that he possibly wanted, this other family that's taken him in and changed him. Maybe they would be better off having him around. So he does make his wish to save his grandfather, which, yes, many people would probably argue it's a big waste. A loved one's probably the best thing to spend it on, but the dude's old. The dude's well old. How long is he going to last at this point? I don't know. Like, what is the wish? Is his grandfather immortal now, or is it just saving him from this one illness? That's the big question mark. Is it going to turn into a Madoka Magica thing that you make your wish and it's not what it actually seems? The other segment of this episode was really around the dream states. It seems like he appears in this one area where there's this big, huge door. It has all the different Knights emblems on it. I'm assuming it's the Knights emblems. It seems like we have a dog there and a lizard there. It seems like this is a room where he's communicating to Samidare Asahina. Now, again, my assumption at this point, based on what they're saying with the outward and the inner Asahina, this is probably the princess, the inner self of the princess that is inside of Asahina. Now, the big question mark here is, what is this discussion? What is happening here? Is it him being directly connected to the princess? Is this something that only Yuhi can do? Will none of the other knights be able to see this inner side? Does the princess herself, is she drawn to Yuhi? That's going to be the big question mark here at this point. But it does seem like there's some sort of connection. And again, I really do believe this is the princess. Because every time he does see her outside of the dream state, she's not really acknowledging what happened in those dreams. And he seems to be very connected to it. And I don't think this could be his inner thoughts just going crazy, but it's so unique and odd that it doesn't seem like it's his choice. Like this doesn't seem like his inner thoughts. This big door and everything doesn't seem like it's something that he would manifest unless we're going to connect something to a past. Again, we're talking about this idea that there's multiple, this has happened before. So there's a possibility that he's like some sort of reincarnation of a past fighter. So there is some already pre-established connection between him and the princess. I think the most odd thing about this relationship between Yuhi and Samidare is that they both technically acknowledge a need for something. And I didn't really connect this until this episode, because Croissant basically says, what are you so angry about? Are you angry at that detective, your father's partner? Are you mad at your grandfather? Are you mad at your mother left you? What are you mad at? And he says, I hate the whole world because the world is the reason why these people exist. The terrible people of this world is created by the world. So in a sense, what he's doing now in helping Asahina is that he wants to destroy the world because he hates the world. Whereas, again, Asahina wants to destroy the world because she loves the world. And so I'm curious if at some point it's going to shift that. Is it always going to be that he hates the world and wants to destroy it? She loves the world, wants to destroy it? They have an equal, their goal is the same. But will it change at some point that he will eventually love the world or love the existence of the world because he wants to be with Asahina? That's where I assume that it'll eventually go to. But again, this writer loves to just throw crap everywhere, so we'll see where it eventually goes. I can never, it's so hard to really predict what this writer does because he's thrown so many of my theories out the window with Planet With. And it's interesting the relationship kind of build that happens with, him in this dream state with Asahina. Because he's essentially saying that he was using her to begin with, and he wants to apologize for it, that he always feels like he has a necessity to have change. His grandfather put so many chains upon him that he feels like he's almost uncomfortable not having those chains. Having somebody always badgering you, then no longer having them badger you, you'll feel emptiness, and you almost want to replace that. So his whole thing was that he wanted her to command him so that he would continue to have chains long after he left his grandfather. But in this actuality, it almost feels as if she wants to change that into almost him not having change through command, but change through desire. And that desire through essentially getting a reward from her. So I'll be interested to see if that just kind of culminates to her always giving him rewards or just trying to push him to fall in love with her just so that he can use her. And it does make me believe that I don't see there being any kind of love from Asahina, but I think she or the princess believes that he loves her so she can use that. And I'm wondering at some point if she'll reveal that you were easy to manipulate, basically. At some point, will the veil come up and he will realize, should I still continue to follow Lucifer? He's being obviously, this whole concept has always been Lucifer. The princess is Lucifer. She's always been manipulating him. But will it come to a point where he falls in love with Lucifer, or does he realize that I don't know if I want to keep following Lucifer? I want to stay with Asahina not the princess, stop the princess, save Asahina, save the world. But yeah, to get the reward, he had to fight the golem. It does seem like he does advance his skills a little bit. I kind of assume this is the direction it's going to go, this idea of not just using the power to manipulate gravity, but use it to manipulate things to create damage. And so, yeah, he does try to push something into the side of it. He does end up flipping this golem upside down mid-air to take it out. So he's going to have to use his mind rather than his power in succession, both of them together. But again, during this whole segment, we do learn from Cassant that this is not the first time. Again, this is indicated by the fact that he knows a lot about this stuff. He knows that he's weak. He knows that he's the weakest warrior. He doesn't want this to happen again. He's going to die halfway through again. So it doesn't all indicate that this has happened before. Now, the question mark that creates is this is a past thing, that the princess has come back at some point and now the hammer's coming again. Is this a repeated thing, or is going to turn into one of those things where it's a parallel world? This is multiple realities. And yes, in some other reality, Cassant went to Amamiya and he failed and the world was destroyed. And then we pop over to this reality, this parallel world, and now we're trying it again, but some of those memories seep over. I'm going to assume that's what this is. I'm going to assume that this isn't just a past thing, but that the princess has been kind of shifting into different realities or rewinding time to try again. There was a couple cut things that I seen from the manga from the adaptation. That was at some point when he's at his aunt's house, his cousin walked in on him, or the one that's calling him Nichan, Koishi. Koishi walks in on him naked, which was odd. And the other thing that was cut was, yes, as you would probably imagine, the scene where Hangetsu Shinonome tests the princess. He rushes in there past her. You see her skirt kind of flutter a little bit. Yes, it was a full upskirt. And he makes some comment as he's leaving, like, I never thought that you'd be into cute cats or something like that, or good cute cat Ponsu or something like that. And yes, Yuhi, when he went by and flipped up her skirt, Yuhi did like a thumbs up. Like immediately reacted to it, like yes, kind of thing. It was dorky. It is odd how much Naz is avoiding the Ponsu stuff. It's not needed, obviously, but it does kind of add character. These are some really goofy, dumb moments of the characters just being dumb and silly. Hangetsu was a decent introduction, seems to be very powerful. That was the assumption based on what Cassant was saying, that the other knights are the strong ones. It seems like Hangetsu not only is strong because of the fact that he's a knight, but it also seems like he's into like these secret martial arts. He's really strong. And additionally, he is... I was going to assume, like, I totally knew this was coming because I think what I mentioned in my first episode impressions with the idea of her being like Lucifer, wanting to destroy the world, it's going to be one of those things where eventually they're going to meet the other knights and they're not going to be okay with the fact that she's doing that. And sure enough, Yuhi mentions that. We got to keep this a secret from this guy because he's a hero of justice based on his business card. So if he knows what Asahina wants to do, he'd probably stop her. And so again, I'm assuming that's the direction it's going to go. Eventually, the other knights will find out what Asahina wants to do, and they will try to stop her, and so she's only going to have Yuhi to protect her. But yeah, really cool episode. Again, this is where we're starting to see those layers start to peel, and I'm already falling in love with it. So hopefully episode 4 and onward keeps it up. But that's my thoughts on the third episode of Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment. Let me know what's thought of the episode. Subscribe if you're not already so you can get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support us more, we have a Patreon link, a tips link, and a super thanks button down below. Definitely appreciate everybody that does, and y'all take care.